Welcome to the Church Answers podcast. I am Thom Rainer, and I always welcome you here. I always love having you here. These podcasts are really brief. We try to keep it around 10 minutes. Rarely do we go over. Just as I said that, I just went over on a podcast by about a minute, so sometimes I am not as diligent as I need to be, but most of the time we keep it right at 10 minutes. We want to give you some bite-sized nuggets, maybe just one nugget to reflect on and to do it very quickly. So that's the essence of the Church Answers podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about saturation evangelism, what that is, and why it can be so effective in your church. But before we do that, as always, we thank Belay, belaysolutions.com, your productivity expert. They provide the type of people that you can get for your church or organization to do the work to allow you to do the things where you are called to do. And that may be things that an assistant can do or a bookkeeper can do, but they do all the work for you. They're behind the scenes. They do all the preparation. They match the person with you. They give you incredible workers that, as I've said many times, you hire someone for 20 hours, and it's like getting a 40 or 50-hour worker because they just have that high a bar at Belay. I've been mentioning that they have a digital book that they're offering called The Power of Productivity. If you haven't gotten it yet, put this text in, go to Thom at 55123. That's THOM at 55123 to get this download. Okay, the question for the podcast is simply this: what is saturation evangelism? And the follow-up question is, why is it so effective in many churches? Saturation evangelism is actually a phrase that came from the 1970s and 1980s, and it's just what it sounds like. It is doing evangelism at many different touch points in your church. Now, here is the reality. Most churches do nothing evangelistically. That is not an overstatement. A majority of churches do nothing evangelistically. Understand that outreach is a broad umbrella. It can include inviting people. It can include ministry to the community. Evangelism is very specific within the umbrella of outreach. Evangelism is sharing the gospel with intentionality to those in your community or anywhere for that matter. So, what is saturation evangelism? Saturation evangelism is having as many touch points of evangelistic outreach as frequently as possible. Let me say that one more time. Saturation evangelism is having as many evangelistic touch points in your church, offering them at the greatest frequency of time. So it's doing more evangelism more often. Now, what does that look like? Well, let me talk about our big initiative at Church Answers and just kind of put it in that context. Our big initiative at Church Answers is called the Hope Initiative. It's our big evangelistic initiative, I should say. Hundreds upon hundreds of churches have adopted it. There's some incredible stories. I would invite you to go to the September 25th blog post that I wrote that has a video of a small church in Kentucky that went through the Hope Initiative. It's incredible. So we'll put the link in there so you can see that, view that story. But the Hope Initiative is simply a 30-day plan to get people praying about evangelism, praying for the church, walking their neighborhood, praying for the people in the neighborhood, and maybe sending an email or a note to somebody in your community, a merchant or something like that. It's a 30-day program, and it is phenomenal. I took 72 pastors through that, 72 pastors and other church leaders through that back in September, and it was a phenomenal time because all of them represented 72 different churches, and when it was all set, actually 71 different churches too were from the same church, and when it was all said and done, they had gotten the fire for evangelism, and so did their church members as they began to share it within their church. So saturation evangelism can be one thing, like the Hope Initiative, done, say, 4 times. It's a 30-day initiative. It's a 30-day program, and it could be done 4 times. And that would be a form of saturation evangelism because you're having your people look outward to reach people with the gospel 4 times a year. Now, you can integrate other forms of evangelism with that. Again, once you get past 2 or 3, you've added a level of complexity to the church that may not be as helpful. But if you have a repeated pattern of keeping evangelism at the forefront of the church, it becomes an incredible tool to reach people with the gospel and to see your church grow. As we think about this, why is evangelism not happening naturally? Evangelism is not something we do naturally as Christians. It is only something that we do supernaturally. Evangelism is one of those ministries and efforts of Christians that we know is going to be fought and attempts to be hindered by the enemy. We know that Satan and his minions do not want to see people come to Christ. And so what Satan will be very happy for us to do is to do what we've always done, to go through the motions and the ministries and the services, but never think about being a Great Commission church. Think about it. When Jesus called his first disciples, he said, "Come and follow me, and what? I will make you fishers of men." Very simply, he began his earthly ministry with evangelism. How did he end his earthly ministry? Right before he was ascended, taken up into heaven, he said, "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth." I want you to look at those bookends now, folks. From the beginning of his earthly ministry to the end, evangelism is what began it, and evangelism was the final words he had on earth. You will be my witnesses. So we know that the church is supposed to do evangelism. We often use the Great Commission passage of Matthew 28, or the one I just cited, Acts 1:8, or others. We know that we're to proclaim the kingdom of God. We know that we're to proclaim the good news of Jesus Christ. But the majority of churches do nothing. And only a significant minority do more than one thing a year. Saturation evangelism means that we're going to inundate, kind of a synonym with saturate. We're going to inundate our church with evangelistic efforts so that we are continuously going against the cultural winds and we are sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with those who desperately need to hear it. So in your churches, if you're not doing any evangelism, look at the Hope Initiative. It's a great way to put your toe in the water. Doing it multiple times becomes saturation. I guess that's kind of a double metaphor on water, toe in the water, then saturation. Do it a lot. Do it a lot. So my encouragement to you is to not only do evangelism, but keep it persistently before the people, because it'll be the thing that your church does not do naturally, but it can be done supernaturally. Before I go, let me mention again my new book, When the People Pray. It's a book to pray for pastors. It's a 30-day book. You know, the Hope Initiative is a 30-day program to get your people moving forward evangelistically. And the person that is often at the front of Satan's attacks are your pastor. Pray for your pastor. Get this book if you're a pastor and hand it out to church members. Don't be ashamed. And then get people in your church praying. Just go through these 30 days and see what God will do. As always, we thank Belay for being our sponsor. We thank them for making the download available, The Power of Productivity. Go to Thom at 55123. That is Thom at THOM 55123. Thank you for being a part of Church Answers Podcast. Remember, every week we drop 3 podcasts, 3 times bite-sized nuggets for you to listen to, and if you're on YouTube, to watch as well. Give us a rating and review. Hey, you YouTubers, we got a small but growing channel there. Give us not only a good review, but subscribe to us as well. Keep in mind, we'll be here 3 times a week, and we will be serving you by giving you the kind of information we think is really helpful for churches. Thank you again for being a part of the Church Answers Podcast. Hey, folks, this is a PS to our podcast. We got some exciting stuff that we want to offer you absolutely for free. Sam, when you think about predictive factors in a church's growth, if you take out demographics, what are some things that come to mind? Just two. I mean, don't give me a list of 10. Just two or three things that come to mind on predictive growth of a church.
Well, evangelism and whether the church is doing it or not.
Bingo.
And then I will add, is it an ongoing evangelism emphasis?
Double bingo. Well? Double, and maybe something about leadership and their commitment to that. So all of the above.
Evangelistic churches have evangelistic pastors. Is the staff, is the lead pastor doing the work themselves?
We have a free download for you, and it's actually a sheet that you can self-score. You answer 20 questions, anywhere from strongly disagree to strongly agree, and we come back and we predict what your growth rate is going to be for the next year in worship attendance. It's not a perfect tool, but it's a good tool. There's a link to that for the attendance predictor. Look in the show notes. You'll absolutely love it. That's cool. We'll see you soon.